It's Thursday, January 9th, 2020. Another amazing day on Wall Street as stocks continue to surge. Dow Jones closes up 211 points. And what is really amazing is the continued bad news. More rocket attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. We get more bad retail numbers, continued bad auto numbers, more bad news in manufacturing, and the stock market continues to surge. So I guess bad news is good news, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to look at all this and know that something is very, very wrong here. You know, the average comatose American believes the economy is booming because their 401k is up, because the Dow Jones is up. The comatose American is being bamboozled. And the comatose American can't think or read for him or herself, because if they could, they would see the real numbers. If they looked at the real data and could critically think for themselves, they would know that something is very wrong here. But they don't care as long as their 401k is up, as long as the Dow Jones is up. You know, we're heading into recession right now. It has begun. And the deeper we go, and as this goes into a depression, quite literally, the Dow Jones, the stock market could be up, and people would still believe in this twilight zone that we're in, that everything is okay because the stock market is up. People have been so conditioned, so bamboozled, that they see no danger here. As long as the Dow Jones and the stock market are up, as long as their 401k is up. And these people, by being this naive, being this negligent, they're going to pay a severe price for this, because I'm here to tell you this is not going to last forever, even though many people think that this will last forever. The cracks are getting too big, and there are too many of them. The Fed is going to lose control. They are in a corner, and they only have a few options. And unfortunately, the more they print, the more they're going to devalue this currency, meaning that it's going to cost you more to buy less. And that's already happening right now. But, you know, to the people out there that think everything is booming, I'm going to ask this question again. Nobody seems to be able to answer it. How come the Fed continues these massive repo injections, this quantitative easing that is taking place right now if everything is going good? Today, the Fed injected another $83 billion into this liquidity crisis that our banks are having. So if everything is so good, how come it seems this is like happening on a daily basis now with these massive billion-dollar injections of liquidity into our banking system? So again, nobody will ever answer me that. The liquidity shortage is not getting better, it is getting worse. The market is now addicted to the easy Fed liquidity that has been unleashed. It will take pain to wean the repo market off the cheap Fed cash. You know, we didn't want to feel the pain back in 2008, so we had quantitative easing 1, 2, and 3, trillions of dollars injected into the markets because nobody wanted to feel the pain. We could have dealt with this back then, it would have been over with, but no, we injected more and more of this propped up, easy, cheap cash, this printed cash into these markets, expanding these bubbles even bigger than they were. Now, I mean, it's unfathomable how big these bubbles are right now. And when they burst, it's going to be like a nuclear bomb going off. And the scary thing is there's just not 1, 2, or 3 bubbles. We have multiple bubbles here. They're all overinflated. And this is going to cause so much damage because we didn't want to feel the pain back in 2008. Trying to stop the repo operations could spark another repo market crisis. That's very, very true because the Fed now is trapped, and all they can do is print and cut rates. If they raise rates just a little bit, these bubbles burst and there's big trouble. If they stop printing this cash and stopping these liquidity injections, things are going to crash. The bubbles will burst. This whole system now is dependent on the fake data and the Fed injecting billions and billions of dollars, buying debt, injecting billions of dollars into these markets. The whole thing is so fake. It is so dangerous. Look, the Fed is running out of ammo, okay? The balance sheet is expanding very, very quickly. We don't have but more than about 1.5%, 1.75% interest rates to cut. What happens after we get to zero? What happens when the Fed's balance sheet starts breaking $5 trillion, $6 trillion? What happens at $10 trillion? All this is 110% unsustainable, and all it is doing is devaluing your currency, your buying power. If you're a saver, you are being punished, and this is going to end extremely bad for America. And we get more bad news today. CNBC, Kohl's shares tank on dismal holiday sales results. Kohl's said same-store sales during November-December fell 0.2%. How could they be falling in this booming economy when the consumer is strong, the consumer wages are going up, unemployment is at 60-year lows? How is this even possible? Kohl's, this is what I would consider a discount store. Kohl's is now calling for fiscal 2019 diluted earnings per share to be at the low end of a previously announced range of $4.75 to $4.95, down from the $5.15 to $5.45. Kohl's stock has dropped about 28% in the last 12 months. JCPenney's, Nordstrom saw overall sales decline of 1.8% from November 1st to December 24th. I mean, this doesn't add up when we have the stock market at all-time highs, the booming economy, unemployment at all-time lows, wage growth. So again, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that something is not adding up here. And so as long as we have the Fed and all this fake data, you know, the fake unemployment numbers, the fake wage growth numbers, the fake inflation numbers, as long as we have all of that, people are going to take it hook, line, and sinker unless you're awake. Here's another one, CNBC, manufacturing economy, weakest in a decade as December ISM index comes in at 47.2. This is the lowest index since June 2009 when it was 46.3. Baltic dry plunges most since 2008. The main sea freight index has fallen for the 20th consecutive session to an 8-month low. This is another economic bellwether in regards to the global economy. Yet these people who continue to tell us everything is great, the economy is booming, booming based on what? Because your 401k is up? Because the fraudulent Ponzi scheme is up? I mean, look at this data. How in the world can anyone believe things are okay? And this is more reason of why you better be preparing. This is another bellwether. Sales of Manhattan priciest apartments plunge almost 40% in the fourth quarter. Sales of apartments of $5 million or more plunged 38%. Real estate sales in Manhattan have fallen 8 out of the past 9 quarters. And you know why? Because the people with money see exactly what's going on and they're going to wait it out. They're going to sit on the sidelines and not let money burn a hole in their pockets because they know the discounts, the sales are coming. The average American doesn't think like that. The average American is out spending money that they don't have, running up credit cards, buying houses that they can't afford, buying cars, leasing cars, you know, for 8 years of payments, 9 years of payments, that they can't afford, okay? When you have wealthy people, and they got wealthy for a reason because they're smart and they're patient. They see what is coming. The average sale price fell in Manhattan 7.5% to $1.8 million in the fourth quarter of 2019. There is now an 8-month supply of unsold apartments. Listings are piling up. The money is waiting on the sidelines. These people, again, are wealthy for a reason. They're patient, they're smart, they know what's happening in these markets where the average bamboozled, comatose American cannot save any money, out there spending $8 for a cup of coffee, running up the credit card, buying things today because they can't wait and save up and pay cash for something. They have to have it today to impress people on social media, to impress friends, to impress people they don't even know. That's the typical mindset of the American today. Also on CNBC this morning, weekly jobless claims fall, but number of unemployed surged to a more than 1.5-year high. In this article, it was talking about the labor market appears to be cooling. It also says that the number of Americans on unemployment rolls surged to a more than 1.5-year high at the end of 2019. So as rockets continue to be shot at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq, as planes are being shot out of the sky, as the auto industry is in recession, as shipping is in recession, as the retail apocalypse continues into 2020, as affluent real estate now is seizing up, the stock market just continues to surge on all of this great news. And we have more news. This is on Zero Hedge. 77% of CFOs say stock market is overvalued, even as they order record stock buybacks. So the Twilight Zone continues. The higher their own stock goes, the greater their equity link compensation. Their pay is dependent on these overvalued stocks, so they will just keep buying them back. But your friends think there is no manipulation in these markets. And we have corporations buying their own stock, borrowing money cheap to buy their own stock, and these CFOs are making a fortune because they get paid by the price of these stocks. So of course they want to inflate them, and that's all they are. They're inflated. There's nothing backing them. So I want to leave you with this today. We are witnessing the biggest melt up mankind has ever seen. This is dwarfing the dot-com bubble. This is dwarfing what happened in 2008. We are looking at depressionary type numbers and beyond. And this is why it's so imperative that every one of you continues to prepare. This is no time for complacency, because there was an article that came out today on Zero Hedge. Central banks continue remarkable gold buying spree. Your friends, family, neighbors, associates may continue to become more and more complacent because their 401ks are up. They believe that their pensions are going to be there for them, even though their pensions are being robbed daily. They become more and more complacent because they are asleep. They are living in their own bubble, okay? There are so many bubbles out here, it's mind-blowing, but they're all gonna burst, including your friends and your families and your associates and people we know. Their bubbles are going to burst too. Their bubble that they're living in is going to burst on top of their financial bubbles. Their living conditions are going to burst. And because of their negligence and because of their denial, they're setting themselves up for economic suicide. In this article, central banks continue the buying spree. Central banks added 27.9 tons on a net basis to official gold reserves in November. The central bank gold buying spree is expected to continue into 2020 as countries continue to create a hedge against geopolitical risk and diversify the reserves away from the US dollar. The dollar's days are numbered, and as Peter Schiff once said, we are going back to the basics. And sometimes the safest thing you can do in life is just go back to the basics, the simplicity. And I think that's where we're going. And I believe that the US dollar is going to be under extreme threat. The world is sick of the wars. They're sick of the manipulation. They're sick of all the abuse that America has caused with the world reserve currency, the US dollar. And it's unfortunate because we are really our own worst enemy. And the world is sick and tired of it. And they're going to look at other options. They're right now doing whatever they can to dump dollars. Look, it is the least sickest kid in the hospital. Everybody talks about the dollar strength, that it's the number one currency. Yeah, it's the number one currency in a sick hospital room of other kids, okay? The problem is all the other currencies are more sick than the US dollar, but at the end of the day, the US dollar is dying just like any other fiat currency has died in the history of the world. It is dying. It is not going to last. And there is, only one option for the dollar to survive, and that's going to be backing it by gold. It must be backed by gold in order to survive. Otherwise, it will not. Another currency or some cryptocurrency will come out. It will be backed by gold, and that is what the world is going to turn to. So whether we're the first ones to do that, if we're not, then it's going to be China. China is going to back their currency with gold, and they're going to literally be the world leader at that point. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things play out in the future. But one more thing I want to add in closing, people talk about all this manipulation in the markets. They talk about manipulation in the metals market. Everything is manipulated, including gold, silver, the stock, everything, bonds, everything is manipulated. But I truly believe that these central banks are buying massive amounts of gold and silver, manipulating these prices in order to buy them extremely cheap. And I believe that they're using this as a hedge against all the debt that they know that they have. And at some point, the manipulation is going to turn in the opposite direction as all these paper entities and paper tools and stocks all collapse backed by nothing. As all this debt fails, the central banks know that they're going to have to push gold and silver to the moon, as they know that they're acquiring it as a hedge against all of this debt, all this paper, all this failing currency. I truly believe that the banks know this, and this is why they're stockpiling up on the only thing that will protect them, and that's gold and that's silver. And expect at some point to see the manipulation do a 180, and you're going to see gold and silver skyrocket while all these asset bubbles collapse. And I think that these banks truly are hedging themselves for that day. Right now, manipulating the prices of gold and silver so that they can buy as much as possible before the day of reckoning comes. And I think that we need to stop listening to what the central banks are doing because they're lying. And we need to start doing what they're doing, and that's acquiring hard tangible assets like gold and silver. And look, that could also include land, obviously going to include food and water and protection and things like that. But we're talking financial protection here right now. I don't know where else you go. Some people will say cryptocurrencies. And look, that's fine. If you believe in cryptos, that's great. I'm not here to knock them, but I'm just old school. I want something with history, and the metals have a 5,000-year history, and I want something that I can hold in my hands, and I want to do what the central banks are doing. They're not purchasing massive amounts of cryptos. They're purchasing massive amounts of metals. So me personally, I'm getting my debts down to a minimum, and I'm acquiring as much metal as possible. And I'm going to continue doing it while the twilight zone continues, while people continue to tell me how great the markets are, even though we haven't had a correction going on 12 years now. people still drinking the Kool-Aid, and that's fine. If you believe in the US dollar, you believe in the financial institutions, you believe what these banks are telling you, you believe that everything is going to be okay, more power to you. Keep buying paper. I'm getting away from the masses. I've broken away from the herd, and reading and studying all this data and what is really happening has opened my eyes. And to me, there are very few options other than buying the cheapest, most undervalued assets on planet Earth, gold and silver, and just really preparing as much as possible for what is coming. I mean, honestly, this is really getting out of control. I think you don't have to be in these markets every day. I'm not, and I don't pretend to be. I'm completely out of them. And there's people making money, and God bless them. I hope that they're taking that money and buying assets and preparing. But there is something so wrong here. You don't have to be a market professional or have a business degree to see or to feel that there's something extremely wrong going on here. The propping up is so obvious, and we know that this whole thing is on borrowed time, and this is why it's so important that you take the time while we have it to be continuing preparations, because one day time is going to run out, the music's going to stop, and there is going to be no time to prepare. It's going to be game on. So I'm going to leave it there. Again, very alarming watching what is transpiring in these markets, what this Fed is doing, and it's going to put every one of us in extreme risk. It's putting your kids at risk. It's putting your grandkids at risk. It's putting the entire country at risk because we are going to have a financial meltdown here in America. It will not be avoided. The day of reckoning is coming. You can laugh at that. You can joke about that. You can call me names, but I promise you, I will be right.